Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the Coaches Corner series with Vitality. My name is Jamie, and I am one of the Vitality coaches, and I'm also acting as the question master for today's session, which is all about the topic of individualized nutrition. So for this conversation, I'm going to be joined by two guests who are both experts in all things nutrition with plenty of experience supporting wellbeing programs in more of a community setting firsthand. So first up, we have James Vickers. Jim, good to see you. How you doing?
Good morning, afternoon, just afternoon.
Just
Good, thank you.
Nice one. I'm glad we've got that sorted to start with. So Jim, I was going to attempt to give you a more formal intro, but I figured that I can do it as well as you could. So would you mind sharing with people just a little more info about your background?
Yeah, so registered nutritionist. I did studied nutrition in university, which seems like a lifetime ago, about 6 years ago. But I've been involved in sort of improving people's well-being for probably around 10 years, just helping people out with, like you said, in sort of community settings, schools, working with families, adults, helping them either lose weight, or just eat a little bit healthier, and sort of getting that messaging right to help them sort of improve their lifestyle over a longer period of time. So working with people for up to 12 months, really.
Nice. So again, there's that kind of like long-term sustained approach to health and well-being, which is something that we definitely advocate. So Jim, it's ideal to have you, but we also have Ryan James as well, who's joining. Ryan, wicked to see you. How's things your side?
Hi, Jamie. Yeah, it's all good, thank you. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you. I'm all good. So same to you, really, Ryan. I'm not going to do your intro. I know you're humble, but would you mind sharing a little bit more about your background before we get into it?
Yeah, so sort of growing up, I was always sort of the overweight kid. So I was always one of the bigger kids. Sort of got to about 16, 17, sort of went through my own sort of weight loss journey. Was then going to go do history at university. Realised I didn't really particularly like reading history, so did a bit of a U-turn. Ended up doing nutrition. Actually did the same course as James just a few years later on. And then once completed my uni degree, my undergraduate, quite enjoyed it. So I went and did a master's in performance nutrition and also started working part-time as a weight management coach. And then after I'd finished my master's degree, I then went and worked as a health improvement advisor for a county council. And then here I am now at Vitality.
Nice. Also, disclaimer, we work together quite closely, both of you. I didn't really know a lot of that information, so glad I got you to do your intros.
Just ask more questions, Jamie, that's what it is.
Yeah, I have to ask you about history another time. So for everyone watching, please do get involved with comments and questions. We do have a template that we're going to follow today. So this session isn't necessarily aimed at delving into the specifics of food and nutrition. I think an area that is often neglected yet provides probably the foundation for healthy eating is the mindset and relationship with food. So some features of restrictive diets include banning or cutting certain food groups, for example. And I think that potentially eliminates foods you enjoy and that provide also maybe some good nutritional value too. So what we're going to establish today is how to approach your nutrition so that it works for you and how to readjust and create balance to support, like James said, that long-term healthy behavior. And I think those are things that all three of us are keen advocates of, is that food is really good, food is really enjoyable, and it can fit to your schedule. So on that note, we've got half an hour, we've got a lot to get through today. Ryan, I'm going to start with you. And we wanted to kind of set the scene because there's a lot of confusion and misinformation. And there's some common traps that we feel people get caught in with regards to nutrition. So just starting off with kind of like social media, I'm a fan. I think it can provide super relevant information at the touch of a button. But it's really difficult to understand and distinguish between whether those sources are credible or not. And often, unfortunately, they're not. So Ryan, from a nutrition perspective, from some of the scientific background and education, when consuming content, are there certain things that we should be looking out for to ensure that it's sound advice? So for example, as an actual nutritionist, an expert, are there certain things that you would never say, which you do see online? Like, what are the things that we should be aware of?
Yeah, I think like you said, social media is it's a great way to keep in touch with people. It's a great way to expand your knowledge. There's a lot of great information on there, but unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation on there. I think the first thing is how credible is the person giving the information. So it's worth just checking on their profile, just checking what qualifications they've got. You always see online coach for people who are sort of PTs or nutritionist doesn't necessarily mean anything. Most people will have sort of where they got their course, where they got their qualification, what course they went on. So I think first of all, check it's a reputable qualification they actually do have, because with social media, it's a platform that you can put anything on there. So you can have Barry down at the local gym who got himself in good shape. He then starts spouting about how he got into shape, but as the name of this topic is, it's individualized. So people might go and follow what Barry was doing. It's worked well for him, but actually, it doesn't work well for other people. And yeah, I think what we'll touch on a bit later on is if people are saying to sort of cut out certain foods or trying to reinvent the wheel. I think essentially, to lose weight, it does come down to calories in versus calories out. You need to create that calorie deficit, so you're burning more calories than what you're taking in. If you've got someone trying to claim that a certain food group or just something that's just a bit out there, often there's no sort of unless they can provide scientific evidence to it, then they can just make anything up. And I think that's the things to ask, where's the scientific information for what you've provided? Most of the time people can't give that. So where's their source? So there's a couple of points there to look out for. I think also if they're trying to sell something, that's often a common theme.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's something that I've definitely experienced a bit. Is like, I've said this lots of times, in that I think your genetics choose you, and that will affect your sport, what you get into, and what you do. And James, on that note, I think obviously everyone is unique, and they're going to be affected by different things. Like, we will have different activity levels. Some of us have injuries, different goals, schedules, and just general day-to-day challenges. So with that in mind, I guess sweeping guidelines aren't always appropriate. So based on what Ryan has just said, Barry's journey worked for him in the gym and he's nailed it, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for me. So how do you actually determine what works for you as an individual and know that you're fueling your body right to achieve your goal?
Yeah, it's difficult, and that's what I think. Like you say, if someone's selling something, they're selling a dream, basically. That it worked for them, so it's got to work for everyone. In my experience, I've worked with kids from the age of 2 right up to 18, and then I've worked with 18 plus. You've got a massive variety there that I've worked with. But then if you go 18 plus and look at adults, some people might be looking for that edge in the gym to lift heavier weight. Some people might be looking for, I want to lose a little bit of weight, or I want to perform in work better and stuff like that. So you've got to figure out where you are and what you want to achieve. And I think that's one of the key points that a lot of people miss out on. They jump straight to, and again, it might be because of social media. Oh, so-and-so's now a size 12. I want to be a size 12. And they're starting there. But think about what you actually want. What do you want out of that journey? Where do you want to get to? And then where are you on that journey? Have you made a start? Have you not made a start? And then you've, like you said, those generalized sort of guidelines that are given. They are just that, the guidelines set by the government. And nutrition changes over the years, and a lot of the problems I've faced with talking to clients is, 1 minute this is good for you, next minute it's not so good for you, because unfortunately things change. We evolve as humans. The food that we eat changes as well, and the effect that has on us later in life changes through a lot of other factors, or external factors other than just food. So a good thing to do is find your own guidelines. So things like BMR, so your basal metabolic rate, like you said, you're born with your genetics. So find out what your basal metabolic rate is a great start to find out how many calories your body is using on a day-to-day basis. Like you said as well, with the exercise that you're doing, if you're more active than someone who else might be on the same journey, you're going to be burning more calories. So you might need to eat more calories than they do to maintain your weight or to even lose weight. So figure out that at the starting point and find your own guidelines. The stuff that the government say, the stuff that is from those reputable sources that Brian said, they give you good guidelines, and if you stick to them, to the letter, it might not work for you. But if you use those guidelines to guide you on your journey and sort of tailor it back towards yourself, it can really, really help. And you can see massive results from that.
Who knew you were so wise? This is not how we talk. I think there's some really sound advice there. And just to touch on that BMR point as well, it's where I'm going to try and jump in. BMR, essentially, James, hopefully this is right, is basically the amount of energy or calories that your body requires day to day just to function as a living human. So take out any activity or exercise, things like breathing, cells repairing, growth, sneezing, coughing, everything that just humans need, basically. So if you want to find out more about that, which is probably the baseline place to start, James mentioned there about having some self-awareness about where you're at, and I think it's a really good important point. There's lots of BMR calculators online, so I'd probably encourage people to kind of look there. I'm glad you agree. I'm not going to ask you any more of that, just in case I'm wrong. But Ryan, now that we've kind of covered like where we're at and self-awareness, and also there are some questions coming in, which I'll make sure I chuck in as well. When you're not in balance, though, whether you're under, overweight, or you're not quite where you want to be, you identify that you want something to change. So with that in mind, how do you actually go about creating sustainable change? Like, what are the things, how do you approach it, and what sort of things should we be looking at that will help us change?
Yeah, so I think a key component that certainly my sort of experience when working with people is, you want it to be a sustainable change. You're starting at A and you want to get to B. You don't want to go back to A. You want to get to B and stay at B. So I think make a list of some of the changes that you can think of that will get you to where you want to be. And then if some of them seem really big changes, try and break them down into smaller chunks. And that way, you're making it a bit more manageable. So you're not trying to change everything in your life all in one go, because then it becomes very difficult to balance. And you end up doing sort of a half-assed attempt at each on each of them, and you don't get anywhere, and you end up giving up. So you're better off small steps. Once you've made a few small changes and sort of cemented in place, add a few more small changes, and then all these small changes might not seem like a lot in isolation, but they're just paving the way towards the lifestyle that you want. And the best way to lose weight, I always say, is not feeling like you're trying to lose weight. You're making a lifestyle change, which I think puts some people off. But I say to them, would you rather, get to where you want to be and stay there, or continuously yo-yo between A and B? And that's what you often see with these sort of fad diets. People seeing that these transformations online, where someone's achieved X amount of weight loss in 7 weeks. We were talking yesterday, and we were sort of saying, how do you actually know that this person's lost that much weight in that amount of weeks? I could quite easily put a transformation up, reduce the number of weeks it's taken, and add a few extra kilograms on the amount of weight they've lost. So I think, first of all, don't compare yourself to other people. It's your journey. Break it down into smaller chunks, and have that accountability. So have something that keeps you sort of on track.
Love it. And we've actually just had a comment which I'm going to bring up because I think it's relevant, and I just want to kind of clear up what our view on it is as well. So someone has put, you can tell when someone is malnourished even if they are buff or slim. Is that something that Vitality discussed, or is it just weight loss and fitness? And based on what Ryan has just said, it's absolutely not just weight loss and fitness. Like, something that I definitely want us to do more of and to be more open with is defining people by how they look. So we've probably all done it, and it's something that we shouldn't be doing, but you probably looked at someone in a room and you've judged whether they're healthy or unhealthy. The three of us are healthy, and we have very different genetics, very different backgrounds, activity levels, focuses and aspirations, but we consider ourselves healthy. So I think that when we're using weight loss as an example, or it could be weight gain, it can apply to anything. Like you'd have noticed there what Ryan was just saying. He was saying it's about small changes. It's about being relative. It isn't about achieving one goal. It's about, I think, creating things that work for you. I assume you're both aligned with what we're saying here.
Yeah, just I wanted to make a comment. I think it's a really good point on that question. But a lot of the people I used to speak to, they would come in and they might be very overweight but massively malnourished. So I used to say to them basically in the first week, sometimes I'd tell them to eat more, and it might be eat more of the good stuff. I don't care what the other stuff you're having. If you're having 5 takeaways a week, fine, carry on like that. But make sure you're eating more of the good stuff. So making sure you're getting plenty of fruit and vegetables in and stuff. and they'd come back the second week, and quite often they would have actually lost weight because they've ate more of the good stuff, and it meant that they couldn't fit in the bad stuff, but also they feel better. And how you feel obviously is a big indicator. So, you don't go into a pub and take the scales with you and say, look how much weight I've lost, mate. Like, look how good I've done. Or you put it online and say, this is how much weight I've lost, which is great for everyone looking at it. But how do you actually feel? And I think that's where that nourishment comes in. And you both know how much I love my food. So making sure you're getting good quality food in means that you're happy and you're healthy.
Yeah, for sure. And we're getting lots of questions, so do keep them coming in. But Ryan, actually, no, I'm going to come back to you, James, and then I'll come to you, Ryan, because we're now talking a little bit more about, okay, so we've established more of the approach, but then if you are looking to create a nutrition plan or an eating structure, James, you kind of touched on it there. What are the things that you need to incorporate? So there's individuality, and there's everyone is different. Love that. But there's fundamentals, right, that everyone needs to achieve. So what's the basis of creating a healthy eating structure?
Well, like you say, it's all well and good what you put on your plate, but more often than not, your journey is defined by everything away from that. But if you're looking at sort of what you need to put on your plate, you're looking at things like good quality carbohydrates, so things like whole grain carbohydrates like brown bread, brown rice, brown pasta, and sort of building your meals around that. That gives you energy to sustain your day to day. Then you've got things like protein to make sure you're repairing. So if you are someone who exercises, or if you just move around, you need protein to repair your body. And then you've got sort of like healthy fats as well that you need to have. And that comes in the form of, doesn't mean that you have to go out and have fat on its own, but it comes in the way of meats or other proteins, such as things like chickpeas and lentils obviously have elements of fat in. Things like carbohydrates will have your fat in as well, and then fruits and vegetables sort of fit within that as well. So trying to balance that is the key. And Ryan said about trying to get that balance right, and it's just not necessarily making sure you eat the healthiest meal, but making sure you get that balance right across the week. So I could give you sort of grams per kilo of body weight and stuff like that, but you'll know if you feel like you haven't got enough energy, maybe have a few more carbohydrates. If you feel like you're aching a little bit longer after exercise, have a bit more protein. And if you feel your joints and your sort of brain's a little bit foggy, sometimes it could just be have a little bit more water and a little bit more fat. So things like oily fish and nuts, seeds, things like that you can add into your diet. And it's not about making drastic change either way. You'll know yourself. Your body will tell you what you need, and that's when you can start to sort of say, well, okay, let's tweak it here. And then the following week, I'll feel good. I'll tweak it there. And all of a sudden you can start making those tweaks and not thinking too much about the grams and weighing things out and what have you.
Yeah, and I think if you are at that point, then the chances are you're in a pretty good place already. So you're just, looking at the minor changes, and kind of based off what Ryan said earlier, it's about accumulation. And imagine if you had a pyramid of importance, the base is that thing that James is talking about, that you're getting enough of each of those three macronutrients. And Ryan, that does bring me to you though, because I know that you're fuming about this, but segregating like food types, maybe even banning certain foods, no carbs before marbs, just so angry about this. Go in, now's your time, go for it.
People are just going to, even though I said I think social media is great, I think people are just going to think I hate social media. So, but yeah, again, you do see on social media these sort of transformations and whatnot. You don't know what's gone on behind them. And I always say these transformations, show me a 5-6 month follow up, and that's the person. We talk about weight loss because that's mainly our sort of background. But yeah, show us have they kept that up, and it does come then to sustainability. And I think you talked about carbs because it's the main one. You get a lot of people who, they start losing the weight and you ask them what they've done. Oh, I've got the carbs out. And I remember I had someone come to me and they're like, oh, I'm thinking about doing the ketogenic diet. And basically that's where you have less than 20 grams of carbohydrate a day. So you're even having to limit certain fruits, certain vegetables as well. And I sort of said, okay, do you know much about it? And they sort of said no. So they sort of heard it from a friend and sort of explained the different carbohydrate sources to them, and explained you've got to up your fat a little bit so to get you in the ketogenic state. And his response, he looked at me very innocently and sort of said, oh, well, I really like pasta. And I just said, well, are you not going to have pasta for the rest of your life then? And he was like, well, no. And I said, well, you're better off maybe portioning it. So for a lot of people, it's not a case you've got to cut out certain food groups or the macronutrients or certain foods. It's just maybe about portioning them and being a little bit more sensible. And bread's another one. We talked about this yesterday. Again, for a lot of people, they cut bread out and they think, oh, yeah, the bread was the reason I wasn't losing weight. When actually, what they've done is gone from having, maybe 2 or 3 slices of toast in the morning with a lot of jam or Nutella on. They switched that for some bran flakes or something like that. So they've consumed a lot less calories and they feel better because they're not having as much sugar and they're getting a better nutrients in the breakfast. And then they switch their lunch from 2 sandwiches with full fat mayonnaise and a whole host of different things on there. They switch it to a chicken salad. So again, they cut calories out. And so I think it's just about making sure any changes they make are realistic. And if you like food, all 3 of us will say we enjoy our food. I never tell anyone to cut out food, even alcohol. I might tell someone to maybe look at reducing the alcohol intake. I won't tell them to cut out completely because it's a social element in our society. So,
Ryan's just cut any ties potentially with Hovis. All sponsorship deals he's just been dropped by them all. But I think it's sound advice. But it applies to everything, right? And actually, again, we just had another comment where someone said, "So would Vitality also educate on what kind of nourishment, or is it just how to manage calories?" I think Ryan's just answered it there. Like it's all about understanding nutrition rather than calories, and they tie in together. If you look after one, you look after the other. And if you see our program of events each month, we have a lot of education sessions about nutrition, and it goes from branching from elite athletes and sports nutritionists to the more basic level people who are looking at that weight loss journey. And James, on the note of enjoyable foods, right? I speak about this a little bit, bang for buck foods. So things which will offer you maximum taste, minimum, I don't want to say damage, but like that are not super calorie dense, right? So you can eat them, enjoy them, and not just be able to have a little spoonful of them kind of thing. What's your thoughts on that? And how does that help you create that eating structure as well?
Yeah, I mean, when you think of those, like you put it in, for lack of a better phrase, those damaging foods, the foods that normally just have like one thing in, so high in sugar, it's just just going to give your body sugar. High in fat, it's going to give your body sort of saturated fat, and things like that, or salt. That's all it's giving you. So it's just giving you taste. But there's a lot of foods out there, and it's not necessarily about one food. The things with high fat, salt, sugar foods is the normally convenience foods, the foods that you just pick up. They're going to be tasty, and they'll probably satisfy whatever craving you've got. But building a nice meal can give you that craving by getting different nutrients in. So you think of things like vegetables. If you started with just a basic, like a carrot, for instance, if you leave Ryan's dog going nuts in the background. So basic carrot, you've got like the peel that's got a lot of the nutrients in, and things like fiber. It's going to give you some of the vitamins and minerals that you need. It's going to give you energy as well. I'm not saying that you're going to snack on a carrot over something like a Mars bar, but by sort of having those foods in your diet and on your day-to-day basis, whether it be at lunch, at evening meal, or even adding things into breakfast, that gives you that satisfaction. So things like berries on your breakfast is going to give you that sweetness that maybe a normal cereal would, but it's also going to give you a lot of nutrients as well. So trying to build foods into your meals or into your snacks, whatever it might be, that give you that satisfaction of flavor, but actually give you something good for your body. So basically something good on the surface, which puts a smile on your face, but then as it goes into your body, it's going to give your body something that your body needs as well. So trying to think of those, and normally, not saying like processed foods, some processed foods do give you, so there's a lot of food goes through a process. Being the island that we live on, there's not much that we can get fresh, but fresh foods tend to be ones that have more nutrients in. They've grown from the ground. They're going to have a lot of fiber, a lot of vitamins and minerals. But food that does go through a process makes it a little bit more convenient. Things like frozen peas, frozen veg, tinned vegetables as well. Even certain ready meals and stuff can give you that sort of satisfaction, and also does have the sort of elements of vitamins and minerals in as well. I'm not advocating one way or another. It's trying to figure out what foods can fit into your diet, what foods you like the taste of, and also what's going to be good for you and help you towards your goals, whatever goals you're trying to achieve.
So off the back of that, I'm going to chuck up an example question that we just had. So this person says, I'm 61, in a healthy range, have a good diet and exercise every day. Are there any particular foods that will help protect me and keep me healthy as I get older? Or I'll just add to that, is it essentially what you've just said about, so I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but you two can just shout out whoever wants to go first. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think part of it does need to come down to, you still want to enjoy your life. So even if I told you to have, these foods will help you, you still do want to find that balance where, you can still go to the pub with your family and enjoy a meal. And then make sure you are getting the healthy fats. So that will help with your joint health. That will also help with your cardiovascular health. Make sure you are getting enough protein, so that can help keep your muscle mass and also help with your bone density. Make sure you're getting enough calcium, which again will help with bone density. So there's just the one that came to the top of my head. James, you got a little longer to think.
No, I think the key thing is you're in a healthy weight range. You exercise plenty. If you think you have a healthy diet, you're probably getting everything you already need. And like we said earlier, there's a lot of products that get sold, which this will cure whatever they want to cure. It's just important to make sure you've got that healthy diet. If you've got that basis, you're probably your health won't be an issue. It's just a case of keeping that going.
I've just written down, have confidence in how you feel. So if you're feeling good, you're doing something right. We've got not too long, but there's just one more super quick question, but I think we can cover this quick. And I think Rita's been to a few of our sessions. So she says, is there something you can eat when you're craving salt that isn't crisps or cheese? So crisps and cheese, just not loads and just not all the time. Like that's what I'm maybe the biggest crisp fan in the world. So like I now buy sort of these pot chips and things which are baked, and they're not as bad, but I make sure that I make an occasion of it, so I don't have it every day. I maybe have it after I've done well in a week, or I use it in that way, but that's not expert nutritional advice, so I'll let you two go cover that one as well.
Well, I'm with you on it, Jamie. I think a big advocate for
either of you want to.
Sorry, you just frozen a little bit there, Jamie, that's all. So yeah, I think
okay, am I back?
You are back. Don't worry. I think we're on a delay, so your internet's slow in the office. I think that's what it is. So yeah, I think you said that they're sort of having crisps and foods that aren't necessarily regarded as good for you. You can still fit it into your diet, just like you said, make sure you're not having it too much or having it too often. So if you are craving something, I actually knew someone who used to love Doritos, but they'd never eat them. They would literally lick the flavoring off them, which is a weird way of doing it. If you're going to do that, you may as well just eat it. But you've probably sat there and you've put like a sharing bag of crisps in a bowl or something. You end up having more than your fair share. Try making sure that you're just not having too much of it. It's probably the way to go. It's probably the easiest thing to do, rather than sort of saying I'm going to cut crisps out, I'm going to cut salty foods out, whatever it might be. Just try and find something that means that you don't have too much of it.
I think also with that, make sure you actually enjoy those foods. So if you're having them a smaller amount, I think you touched on there, like putting it in a bowl. And I think to me that sort of, I had the image of someone sort of sat watching TV and eating the crisps. You're not actually paying attention to the flavors. So you're basically having things, you're not making the most of them. So actually when you do have these foods, having them in moderation is fine, but just make sure you're making the most of them when you are having them.
Yeah, sit at like a wall and stare at the wall as you eat them.
Force yourself to enjoy them.
Or watch something like this. It would definitely. Just to follow up as well, Jane said, thanks guys, I feel 31, so must be doing something right. There you go. She says, how much protein would you suggest? And just because we're running out of time, I'll cover it and say something like 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. So if you're 100 kilograms, 160 grams a day is probably ideal, but yeah, you do the maths with that one. So I just want to cover this final question. Ryan, I think I'll come to you. Scales, some people call it like the naughty step. Some people say they're best thing ever. What's your thoughts on scales, and what should we actually be using them for, if we should be using them at all?
Yeah, so when it comes to sort of scales and sort of tracking your weight, there seems to always be like two camps. There seems to be the camp that says, yeah, you've got to weigh yourself every day, keep yourself on track, monitor it. And then you get people who go, oh, scales are useless. And I'm very much sort of in between. I think it's a tool to measure your progress. It certainly shouldn't be the only tool that you use to measure your progress. And also, don't take it on a day-to-day or even a week-to-week basis. Look at how your weight's changed over time. And the way I always say to people, try not to have an emotional attachment with the weight. Think about how you're feeling. Are you sleeping better? Have you got more energy? Are clothes feeling better? I always say to people, if you're, say, 100 kilograms, we'll say. So if you're 100 kilograms and you drop to, say, 99 kilograms in 6-7 weeks, and someone's a bit disheartened, but they feel better, they say that the clothes are feeling looser, I say, okay, would you rather that, or you lost 10 kilograms in that amount of time, but your clothes still felt the same, your fitness was still the same, and you didn't feel good about yourself? Which one would you choose? And they always say they'll go for the 1 kilogram loss and sort of feeling better, noticing the changes. So it's just not having that emotional attachment with the weight, because essentially what it is how much gravity you're putting towards the floor at that exact moment. If you stepped on the scale, stepped off, and I told you to hold this heavy bag, and you step back on the scales, you're going to weigh more. Or if you drank a little bit more fluid. So if you did have a little bit more salt in your diet the previous day, there might be a little bit more water retention there. If you had a slightly heavier meal the night before, you're going to weigh a little bit more. Again, it can depend on your toilet habits. I won't go into too much detail on that, but have you got more sort of food in your stomach? That all weighs something. I used to have evening weight management groups, and people wouldn't have lost the weight that they sort of expected to. I sort of get talking to them. They'd had a really good week. Turns out they'd had their dinner before they'd come for weigh-in, whereas normally they'd wait till after. I sort of said, well, you may as well just, stood on the scales, holding the food that you've eaten, because it's not gone anywhere in that time. So I think, I always say, try and think logically when you step on the scales. Have you had a good week? Do you feel better? If the answer is yes, then it doesn't matter what the number on the scale say. So it's trying to just remove yourself from having that emotional attachment. And, it is a tool, but that's what it should be. It doesn't define you as a person. It doesn't define, you don't walk around identifying yourself as a 100 kilogram man, do you? Or female, you'd rather someone sort of said, oh, you're looking better, or something like that. So.
Yeah, a wise man once said, never weigh yourself after a carvery. And that was Brian yesterday. He's bang on with that.
I did have someone do that, yeah. So unfortunately, it took about 10 minutes for us to get to the reason why they hadn't lost weight. So they were just astounded why they hadn't lost weight. And then we came to that conclusion.
3 kilos of carvery in them.
Yeah,
so I think we've covered obviously quite a bit there, but there's definitely some themes that have come through, which I'll try and summarize. Also, Risa says, thanks, guys. I do only eat them occasionally, but just wondered if I could cut them out completely. And I would say, don't feel like you need to cut them out completely. We kind of have said things about listen to your body, have confidence in how you feel, look at long-term accumulation rather than really significant short-term changes. I once read something about, like, if you have 2 parallel lines and you put a 1 degree difference in the angle between them both, that over time will lead to a significant difference. And I think that's how we should probably look at our overall health, is that it's the smaller steps that will lead to the bigger changes. Is that summarized it? Are you both happy?
Yeah, I think on that, it's one thing that I've sort of made probably for the past 3 or 4 years. Every new year, obviously you set yourself a resolution, and it is what it is. You either stick to it or you're not. But I always say, when I go into my next year fitter and healthier than I was the previous year, then, like, say, making small changes across a year is going to make a massive, massive difference. And if every birthday you say, oh, actually, I feel better than I did at previous, and then you're doing something right.
Yeah, and that's the point, is that it's all relative to you as an individual. So don't get caught up in what other people are doing. Do your own thing. Thank you both for your wisdom and knowledge. I have loved talking to you. Everyone watching today, thanks so much for your questions and getting involved as well. Please do share this content far and wide. We want to help as many people as we can. And by having your input, that actually helps us shape these discussions. So if you enjoyed what we did today and you fancy moving a little bit tomorrow, we've got yoga with Millie at 1:30 at the same place. And then also we're doing another nutrition session where James and Ryan may or may not be involved. one of them will be involved, which is a little bit more around like food packaging, portion sizing. So we're going to carry on this conversation, but go into a little bit more depth. So that's on the 20th of August. Hopefully you've got our wellbeing calendar. Check that out. Everything that you need is in there. But in the meantime, thanks both. That was fun. Hopefully catch up soon. And everyone watching, thank you again for joining. Take care and hopefully see you soon.
Cheers, Jamie. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.